Islam, and we on part two. And part one kind of cut off on us at the end there, and I do apologize. And so we're back, part two, and we're examining the governing instruments. And so let me get everything back online. And look, I'm always looking for help over here at Temple number 13 with the media, with Temple. So if you are interested in joining one of our ministries, please let us know. You can reach out to me at 810-588-1775, or you can reach out by email at pmilesel@msta13gov.com, or you can simply go to msta13gov.com. So let me get things back online here. And that was frustrating too. I'm not even gonna pretend like it wasn't, because we was getting into a specific point, and I know I try not to be, I'm doing my best not to go away from the objective by trying to facilitate or convey too much information at one time, or information concerning the prophet at one time. And so if I do cause some kind of confusion, please forgive me. Okay, so we're back, and we're examining our three main and then you got it's four instruments that we're looking at. One is the affidavit of organization, the questionnaire and additional laws, the Holy Koran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, okay, we are doing a forensic analysis, should I say, a forensic analysis right? So we got the national identification card, which says this is your national identification card for the Moorish Science Temple of America and birthrights for Moorish Americans, etc. We honor all divine prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius. May the blessings of the God of our Father, Allah, be upon you that carry this card. I do hereby declare that you are a Muslim under the divine laws of the Holy Koran of Mecca, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I am, in quotation marks, all caps, I am a citizen of the USA. Noble Drew Ali the Prophet. Then you got the home office, 2905 5th Street, Southeast Washington, D.C., 20032. So this instrument is issued from the MST of A, and it's for the Moorish Science Temple and birthrights. That's a comma, and birthrights for the Moorish Americans, comma, etc. And this was all done under the Constitution. Well, these actions, these transactions, actually, this is a transaction. Like you're going to buy something, you're doing a transaction. This is a transaction. And what's being conveyed here was all protected and secure under the First Amendment of the Constitution, under that first 10 amendments, including but not limited to the first 7 articles of the Constitution. Article 6 declaring the Supreme All right. And so what is a trust? What is trust? An equitable beneficial right or title to land or other property held for the beneficiary by another person. So it's held for, right, the beneficiary by another person in whom resides the legal title or ownership, recognized and enforced by courts of chancery. So pay attention. An equitable or beneficial right. See the or title to land or other property. So these instruments is title to property. It represents an equitable, right? Well, how much equity do you have in the property? How much money did you put in? How much did you invest in the property? How much equity, right? And then you have to kind of, when I think of, or beneficial, when I think about equity, I go back to the letter from George Washington in 1789 when he talks about, well, thank you for giving to our commerce with your dominions. We just got done fighting the war. We beat up. We ain't got no money. We bankrupt. And we bailed them out. We set up a platform for the Europeans, immigrants that came, i.e. pilgrims. We allowed them, we gave them parcel. So we bailed them out. They wanted to disenfranchise from Great Britain, from the abuses, the taxation, the rulership. They didn't want to be slaves. So we say, well, you know what? We're going to finance your freedom. You can come over here into our family. We adopt you. Naturalization ain't nothing but an adoption process. So it's an adoption. We're going to adopt you into the family. Therefore, you have now the protection of the family. This is why everybody talking about the Americans. And American means Aboriginal indigenous. Okay. And that's in reference to the Moors, because this is the Moroccan Empire, which in order to be an American, a true American, is you need to be more, you need to be a Moor. You got to be Moroccan, because this is the Moroccan Empire. Our flag is over 10,000 years old. Hence is why you see, which, well, a lot of people think is masonry. Hence is why you see the all-seeing eye, the Great Seal on the Federal Reserve note. So this represents finance. That's why I said this is also a surety bond. Okay? Because you got us that's always been here. This is an ancient claim. This also is an Aboriginal. This is also a Lodio title. This is also an Aboriginal claim, an indigenous claim, an ancient claim, a pre-existing claim being summoned, being invoked, being called forth, and then taking it from the ethers, placing it in writing, bringing it into a third dimension, and then filing it for the record, for the public to do an inspection, because this impacted and affected the public lawfully. Why? Because we were treated by the citizens, meaning the business owners, all this stuff was shaped around us being inappropriately and illegally identified through and by those slave brands. That's why the prophets say we're here to teach our people their nationality and their divine creed, so they may know that they are part and partial of this said government. Well, how are we a part and partial of this said government? Number one, We just established, reestablished, restored, resurrected to bring back, to do over again, a new contract that invokes or connects or locks in all of the ancient covenants that have been dismissed, abandoned, and or disqualified, and or dishonored, and or bankrupt. Meaning that people wasn't following the original covenant, which is in reference to the treaties, right? The treaty agreement that brought, and why is this so important? Well, why was it so important to the prophet, Noble Jew Ali, to bring forth this image, the statement at the bottom of the image, where it says the Sultan Abdul Aziz Ibn Saul, which just means the sons of Saul, and Abdul means servant, and Sultan means ruler. So Sultan, the servant and son of Saul, descendant of Saul, the descendant of Hagar, now the head of the holy city of Mecca. Now this is on page 2, right? Now the prophet, Noble Jew Ali, a prophet is above a sultan. A sultan is not above a prophet. The only thing higher than a prophet is the great God of the universe, Allah, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. AL, descendant of the covenant. AL means descendant and contract. So the descendants of the contract, the successors. So Allah, which means the law, which means contract law, the law of the contract. And what is the laws? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Treat each other right. And it's a breakdown, but that's what I mean by it. It's so much intel. So going back, and he says in here, in this paragraph, he states that he said the reason, the last paragraph he states, the title is on page 3, divine instructions from the holy prophet. So these are instructions from the holy prophet. You don't got to be confused about this. This is not to be modified. This is not to be changed. This is not to be stuff to be moved out. This is not to be ignored. This is not to be put up in the closet and never used. This to be used. This is a tool to be used at law in all of your transactions. This is the cargo. These are the articles. This is your property, which is dealing with the disposition of your estate. It's revealing to you. It's the will of Allah. So you got the will. You got the bylaws, divine constitution. You got your cautionary additional laws, which is a certificate of trust. You have your proof of contract, which is in accordance with Article 4 of the original treaty, which states that, hey, you got to have your passport. And we'll get into what is a passport, right? What is a passport? What is a national identification card? Why was this issued? What is this instrument used for? As you can see, our flags is up top. That's the flag of Islam, which we founded Islam, right? We're the founders of the holy city of Mecca. They go to hand press, which identifies the covenant. They go to 7, the Elohims, which means this is binding on you 7 days a week, every single day. This is the law, which is Allah, and the law's contract. So in this last statement, he says, the reasons these lessons have not been known is because the Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine The Muslims of who? Where? India, Egypt, and Palestine had these secrets and kept them back from the outside world. And when the time appointed by Allah, they loosened the keys, freed these secrets, and for the first time in ages, have these secrets been delivered in the hands of the Muslims of America. All authority and rights of publishing of this pamphlet of 1927. Now, when you go in 1927 and go to the Treaty of Judah between the Sultan Abdul Aziz ibn Saud, which just simply means the servant, the ruler's servant of the family of Saul, of the tribe, or descendant, or son of Saul. So when they say the Sultan, they saying the family is in power. Now in 1927, this was published along with the Treaty of Judah, which is an agreement, a trust agreement, an international treaty between the House of Saul, Ibn Saud, and Great Britain and the League of Nations, now called the United Nations, where the House of Saul was recognized as the sovereign, the first king of Saudi Arabia. And in 1927, via that treaty, the actions and transactions that took place, which is the incorporation of Mecca, Medina, Najib, and the coordination of Egypt and the other Muslim kingdoms, with the recognition of Ibn Saud, the son of Saul, as the sovereign, first king of Saudi Arabia. Now, so the Treaty of Judah of 1927 teaches us about the transfer of power that took place internationally and how all this was surrendered back to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Hence the publishing of this book, the pamphlet of 1927, in conjunction with the filings and the actions of 1928 of our authority on the affidavit of organization to now organize our government under the terms and conditions of the divine constitution and bylaws and additional laws and the divine instructions from the great God Allah, prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali, the messenger of Allah. Also the claimant, also the plaintiff, and also the claimant. And through his actions, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali claimed the entire world, both the Muslims and the Christian world. Why? Because of these treaty agreements, not only in 1927, but in ancient times, because we existed on, we're the founders, and we'll go into that. But before I get there, in the bottom paragraph, it says the industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamanites, Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua and received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt. So a license means permission. So the Moors received a license, permission, a mandate, authorization, a warrant, a charter by the pharaohs of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt. And a charter just represents the sovereign authority that has been granted to you to operate. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms are called this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. Now, when the prophet put it in here on the bottom paragraph, say we built these kingdoms, and these kingdoms are known this day. These kingdoms collectively make up the Moroccan Empire. And so when the prophet put it in here on page 3, the very beginning, page 3, this is for the Moorish Americans to go now and look at the political history, the events that took place in Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. So which makes you now, you got to go to the treaty agreements. You got to go into the history. You got to go into the political history. Then you wind up at the treaty agreement. Well, you're like, well, okay. Now that I know I'm not black, Negro, and colored, now it's being revealed to me I'm not black, Negro, and colored. And that was something, that's a non-degree. That was put on the slave. I'm not a slave. I'm also, I have a nation. Yeah. Well, I'm Moroccan. So now that I thought I'm Moroccan, through this revelation, through this intelligence, through this software, through this device, this was a technological device. This was the computer. This was your Google. Prophet Noble Drew Ali was Google in 1913 and 1929. And to today. Why? Because you couldn't get this information. You couldn't get this information from nowhere else. It was held a secret. So if you wasn't part of a secret society, if you wasn't a Mason, an Eastern Star, or whatever, how did you get access to this information, to this intelligence, to this technology? You couldn't. And here come the prophet. 1913 AD with the old Canaanite temple, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science civic organization, which transformed into Moorish Science Temple of America religious organization, and then written under the protected and secure forever under that First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, under the Article 3, Section 2, Article 6, the Constitution, which was prepared for all free national beings, ETC. That's where the ETC comes from. So for my brothers and sisters that's on the fence about should I study the treaty, well, the prophet tell you to study the treaty. It's right here. He said, we built these kingdoms. We built the kingdoms. Now we're dealing with the time of slavery. Well, who conducted that? Well, the Pilgrims, the English, the European descendants. What's going on? So now we got to look at our relations. Well, what happened? What kind of relationships did we have prior to that? Well, we had a covenant. We had a covenant to disband all that. That was improper, illegitimate, unlawful. You take something from me unauthorized, it's still unlawful. So moving right along, understanding our instruments and why is it under seal? So so going to chapter 47, right? We're going to chapter 47. And in chapter 47, some more important information. Chapter 46, the divine origin of the Asiatic nation. So it names all members of the Asiatic nation in chapter 46. That's operating under the covenant, but dishonoring the covenant. But it's all because us moving around as black, Negro, and colored people. So they say, well, we can't even, because we in dishonor. So they don't have no right to honor our rights. In chapter 47, our land is revealed. The deed of the land is revealed. It's all under seal. And this is the cargo. We're dealing with truth. And so this is a very important instrument that's supposed to be used in your daily transactions. Now, let's go take a dive. Let's bring us back. Let's bring us back into the instruments. So, for example, I was able to go enter into a court matter on behalf of my wife with this article, with Article 7, Act 7, and issuing this instrument, putting this into the court record, for the case file, to provide the facts, the truth, the evidence. They say, well, you're a lawyer. No, I'm the husband, right? This allows me, because when you're married means contract. A marriage means contract. A marriage is a contract. It's an agreement between both parties, male and female. So there's a contract, which makes it one jurisdiction, one authority. Now, acting under our customs, our divine creeds, say, well, husband, you must support your wife and children. So I got to go. I got to be the defender. Two, wife, you must obey your husband. Therefore, I have the power of attorney. So this acts as a power of attorney. This is really what frees you, because under the straw man, the social security number, which is fundamentally supported through the 14th Amendment, and Noble Drew Ali clearly states that there is no need, and I'll speak from his words and not mine. And this comes from the divine warning by the prophet, authorized by the prophet for the nations. And he clearly states in right here, I'll read it to you. He says the 14th and 15th Amendment brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners who were at that time without power with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitutional law that was in force since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendment for the salvation of our people and citizens. So, before I move on, I want to touch this too. He said, I love my people. I desire their unity and mind back to their own free national divine standard, because day by day they have been violating the national and constitutional laws of their government by claiming names and principles that are unconstitutional. If Italian, Greece, Chinese, English, Japanese, Turks, and Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion before the constitutional government of the United States of America, it is no more than right that the law should be enforced upon all other American citizens alike. And all other governments, when a man is born and raised there and asks for his national descent name, and if he fails to give it, he is misused, imprisoned, or exiled. Any group of people that fail to answer up to the constitutional standards of law by name and principles, because to be a citizen of any government, you must claim your national descent name, because they placed their trust upon issue and names formed by their forefathers. So the prophet says clearly in his own words that our ancestors placed their trust. He says, so if any group of people fail to answer up to the constitutional standards of law by name and principles, because to be a citizen of any government, you must claim your national descent name, because they placed their trust upon issue and names formed by their forefathers. So mind you, the trust is for asset protection. It's where you put your property at. That's for the benefit of your children, right? Well, this for my children, put this in trust, right? And this is a private contract. So in the case of foreclosure or default, a financial default, financial bankruptcy, the assets are protected. The rights to the assets are protected. It can never be transferred. It's protected by trust law. So the prophet said, well, you can't even inherit your estate, which has been placed in trust by your forefathers in names that they formed. It's been placed upon issue, in trust upon issue. This was issued to me, the national identification card, which is proof of contract. Now I'm in a capacity to inherit my estate. My estate has been redeemed by the prophet in Acts 6. I'm not Negro, black, and colored, or Ethiopian. I'm Moorish American, a descendant of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited northwestern and southwestern shores. So this takes us out of being dead in the eyes of the law, civically dead, lost at sea, subject to power of attorney from a foreign power. So my vessel has been successfully claimed and captured by pirates, because there's no captain of the ship and all the cargo has been abandoned, which I'm claimed as the cargo. My soul is the cargo, because this body is a vessel carrying cargo, which is my thoughts, which is my soul, my spirit. So they claiming my essence and taxing me to death for my own stuff on my own land, because I'm sitting here casting a spell, a curse on myself by claiming names that are unconstitutional, meaning that these names are unlawful. Unlawful is law is a spiritual issue, spirit realm, meaning that this thing is going to get you. It's going to cause massive damage in your lifespan. Like, well, why things not going on? And it's causing slavery to be enforced in the 21st century, where people now, you can't do this, and because they think they got you under a system, a color-coded system, where you white or black or white, and you need to be pulled out of that system, that matrix, which is what the prophet did here in Acts 6 and published it for the record, took it from out of the etheric and brought it into the third dimension by putting the words and proper prepositional phrases on paper for the record as the claimant authorized to do so. And then bringing forth, revealing these truths back between 1913 and 1929. And on 1929, it's been revealed is when the third bankruptcy took place. The prophet bankrupted the system because the system was predicated on falsehood and lies, that these people were black, Negro, and color, and they actually were the heirs of the land, the aboriginal indigenous people of the land who had been enslaved, and all of their rights to their estate, meaning natural gas, minerals, metals, water, air, all of it belongs and entrusted to a people, and this is their legacy. This is also a legacy account, which is why the first thing he did was said in Acts 6, the Moorish Americans are descendants, which activates the legacy law, the legacy clause, meaning that this estate has heirs that's been passed down to, and the heirs are now officially identifiable heirs, competent heirs, which activates the Moroccan Peace Treaty law, which is the supreme law of the land. And those articles are now invoked and perfected, and it creates a lien, not UCC filing, but a non-UCC filing, which means you're dealing with the law and not UCC codes, and you're dealing with the law and perfecting your claim, which has been perfected here. Now all you have to do is act accordingly and not act in an adverse capacity, going against the contract, the law that's already been laid for our salvation. All you got to do is act accordingly, which it states here in Act 4, all members must preserve, must protect, preserve. I mean, you got to protect the culture, because this is what they want to take. This is what was taken away from the Moors, your nationality, and with that, your culture, your rights to practice. Why it's how you got enslaved. That's why you was forced into Christianity and to other ideologies and isms and doctrinations that were contrary to your well-being, had nothing to do with your natural, your native practices, languages, etc. All of these things. How you think we're speaking so-called English today, or communicating in this technology? So let me get back on point. So this is Trust Law 101, Part 2, with the Grand Sheikh of Temple number 13 of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Noble Drew Ali, the founder, and we are examining the governing instruments, right? Here's a photo identification. Now, not too long ago, for a contract issue, and they tried to, and I stated that I wasn't personally liable. I'm not personally liable, sir. They said, well, yes, you are. You could be personally liable, but he had to refer and go to the evidence, which is the contract that was entered into court, and he had to see it was I personally liable via my endorsement, or via the endorsement. And kind of find out under that signature, it clearly states all rights reserved, not personally liable. which removed all liability. So these people can't move forward in trying to foreclose on property and then attach me as the collateral to damage my credit history. So I wouldn't be able to move to nowhere if I needed to. I wouldn't be able to finance my activities because these people are in the business of making us personally liable or the collateral on the obligation when all obligations has been discharged. It's a total fraud and scam via house foreclosure, executed the foreclosure process here, and it was probated. For those that don't know what probate means, let's go to our book of spells. Well, I just say, what's that? Probate. Excuse me. We'll say probate is the judicial process whereby a will is proved in a court of law and accepted as valid public document that is the true last testament of the deceased, or whereby the estate is settled. All the stuff I just said. I just said that. Okay. Now, so the judicial procedure. So this probate means the judicial procedure. Judicial like a judge make a determination by which a testamentary document is established to be a valid will unless set aside the probate of a will is conclusive upon the parties to the proceedings and others who had noticed of the proceedings on all questions of testamentary capacity, the absence of fraud or undue influence, and due execution of the will. Probate does not preclude inquiry into the validity of the will's provisions or the proper construction or legal effect. And that's why, you know, when he did this, he brought it under that religious First Amendment, and therefore the prophet is the judicial executive authority. No need for no courts, and the probate is conducted at the registry of deeds. Okay, which means to be authorized, recorded by authorizing officer, meaning that it passed the lawful inspection of validity. So this will was proved and proved valid. Okay. And then 1929, when the prophet passed forms, when a person dies, his or her distribute the decedent's property according to the laws of the descent and distribution. In general, the probate process involves collecting the decedent's assets, liquidating liabilities, paying necessary taxes, and distributing property to who? The heirs. Okay. So, what did the prophet do? Noble Drew Ali do? He went and let me pull this back up. Boom. This was probated.